Hello you, welcome to Geekism and welcome back to Pinewood Hills. First of all, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and let me know by clicking the like button. And if you're new here and you'd like to see lots more creative gaming for grown-ups, all you have to do is click subscribe. So if you are of a nervous disposition, you probably should look away by now because Pinewood Pier has gone. Today we are building Pinewood Pier, that's right, the king is dead, long live the king. So yeah, we did have a pier originally. It was a very simple structure with a Ferris wheel on it. But with the vintage pack coming out, it was kind of a given that we were going to have another go at some of that stuff. You'll notice there, I'm moving quite a bit away. Don't worry, it's all saved. It's just going to be part of a big move around of some of the stuff. 60s area is going to shift a little. The vintage area, the original sort of 30s, 40s area is going to open up a little bit more, just so we can use some of this new vintage stuff because it's gorgeous. It's really lovely, and I didn't want to start a new park. I was very sure of myself that I didn't want to start a new park like we did with Studios. I just haven't got time for a third series. Basically, we're just about getting back into Studios now. Yeah, just couldn't do a third series. So, and also saying that the vintage park pack really lends itself well to Pinewood. You know, this is a vintage British park, although it's moved on now. We're building sort of 60s, 70s, 80s area. We're going to be starting soon on relatively modern area. The original big selling point of it was that it's a vintage park, so it's kind of ridiculous not to come in here and use some of this awesome stuff. So first things first then, the old pier has gone, which was very simple. It was basically just a long path that went out and it had a Ferris wheel on it, and part of me always wanted to do something a bit more with it, and then when this vintage pack came along, then it kind of seemed obvious that we would. So we've shifted the entrance around from where it was originally to here. It doesn't really fit with the 60s area, but like I say, a lot of that stuff is going to start to have a shift over the next week or two. It's going to be a big redo project. Don't panic. A lot of the buildings we've done are still going to be there. It's just going to be a case of having a good move around with them. So yeah, this area is going to become a little bit older. We're going to sort of retrofit this to be part of the original park. So what we're doing then here, it's very much based on a Blackpool pier, or seaside pier in the UK in general, but very much Blackpool because that's kind of the ones I know. They were the ones we always went to as a kid. I went to Weston-super-Mare a bit as well, but for the most part, Blackpool was where it was at for us. The key thing for me with the difference between a British pier, a Blackpool pier, and maybe some others elsewhere in the world, is they have this really great mix. I say great, a lot of people don't like it. I love it. The really great mix of vintage builds and vintage decor and vintage pomp and circumstance mixed with tacky development through the 70s and 80s. Okay, so that it's such a weird mix to see. You get to somewhere like Blackpool and they will quite happily have this gorgeous Victorian architecture, and they'll have covered up the cornices with a big neon sign that says girls, girls, girls. It literally is that kind of weird juxtaposition. It's something I really love. Now obviously we're not going to go quite that extent here because this is a theme park, it's a family attraction, but I do want to kind of get a little bit of that shift of sort of Victorian build, but then tweaked a little bit to be a little bit more sort of focused on making money. So it's also quite a small pier. Obviously, we're building it on a lake within a theme park, so it's really a sort of facsimile of a larger pier. And with that, because of that, the buildings themselves are going to be quite small. There's just the one ride on there, one of the new ones that we placed down there. I forget what it's called. It's the one with the smallest footprint. Fits quite nice on the pier there. So it is still going to be sort of like a mini theme park version of a pier. I know for a fact that a couple of other people are doing piers. The one I'm going to let you know to go and watch is Mass Bandit. He's doing a full pier park. So he's built a map with a road down the seaside, and there's a large pier, and it's based on more of the American pier. So it's going to have like a wooden coaster on it and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to see a big pier build, go ahead and check that out. I'll pop a link in the description. Here, this is going to be, like I say, a smaller one. It's kind of like a facsimile, a sort of miniature version of a British pier. So the vintage pack overall, really quite impressed with it actually, more so than I honestly thought I was going to. Obviously when it was first announced I thought, oh, this would be great for Pinewood Hills, but I wasn't really expecting too much. I'm actually very pleasantly surprised. I'm really impressed with the rides. You can obviously tell this is more of a ride focused DLC than it is scenery DLC. We've got less scenery than we have in previous DLCs, but we've got more rides, and also the rides use very different structures. So all three of the new coasters use new structure creation algorithms, I don't know what you want to call them, but each of them sort of generate the structure in a new way, especially the Wild Mouse and the bobsleigh coaster. And yeah, the bobsleigh coaster uses physics to make the cars sort of swing in a cool manner, which is new because we don't have that with like the swinging mine train or the swinging inverted. So it's really nice that they're still improving the actual sort of core mechanics of the game where they can. And then obviously, you know, talking of core mechanics, we've also got the new vending machines and the new sort of food outlets and Zoltar machines and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, for that reason, it's shaping up to be one of my favourite updates. I would still probably nip Studios above it, purely because Studio Parks are my favourite kind of theme park to visit. So I really having a lot of fun in the studios, Geekism Studios. The only problem with Geekism Studios is it takes so long to get dark rides done, and it's no fault of the game. It's just that's the level of detail you have to go to. Just takes so long to get things to happen. So for that reason, you know, we've not done as many Studios videos as I probably would have liked to have done. The nice thing about this is because we can jump in here and pretty much get this pier finished. The only reason it didn't quite get finished, so purely just ran out of time. I wanted a Pinewood video today to go up at 5 o'clock like usual, and it's now 3 o'clock while I'm recording this audio. I got up this morning and just started playing. Yeah, just ran out of time basically. So else I probably would have just capped this area off. So we'll probably look at capping this off in a live stream because next Pinewood Hills video, which is hopefully going to be I want to say Friday, but I'm not too sure whether we'll get it done in time, is going to be more vintage stuff in Pinewood Hills. You know, Studios, we've recently got back to it. We're doing our Kerbal coaster, and again, next episode of that, we'll finish the Kerbal coaster. But while the vintage pack is sort of fresh, I really want to dive in and use some of that sort of creative juice that a new pack gives you. You know, I don't know about other people who play this game, but for me, getting new stuff just makes me want to come and dive in and use it all. So it's also quite a fun challenge to kind of come in and from a YouTube point of view see how much of the new stuff you can actually use. You know, there's probably non-vintage pieces that would work quite well in here, but I purposefully try, and I did this with Spooky, I did this with Adventure, I purposely try and use the new stuff as much as I can, because you know people are going to be trying to find videos showing off the new stuff, and for that reason that's kind of the reason I do it. But I do enjoy trying some of the new stuff. So here we're building a small arcade that's going to go at the end of the pier. There's no interior. I'm going to put a couple of shops in there so that people do wander up here occasionally, but it's just a bit too small to do a proper interior, really. Again, the size of the pier itself is pretty small, so I just wanted a nice building that looked good from the rest of the park, and also again just to kind of have a play with this with the new stuff. One thing I really quite like with this is that the entrance you're seeing me build here is actually sort of like the back door, I guess. You'll see when the whole building's done, this is kind of towards the end of the end of the pier, and the main entrance would have been the main entrance at some point is now covered by the ride. And again, that comes down to this idea that they do it a lot in Blackpool. I don't want to say horrible. I apologise for anyone who works at Blackpool or you know has any sort of you know regular part in dealing with these kind of places in Blackpool, but it's almost like they don't have that much of a respect for the original buildings, and that's something I wanted to kind of get across here. Again, this isn't a Blackpool pier, this is Pinewood Hills, but this kind of aesthetic is kind of what I wanted to get across. So the large main entrance of this is actually going to be covered up by a ride, because at some point in the future, when the arcade hasn't done so well, they've thought, right, let's get a cheap ride up there and just squeeze it in front of it. You know, it's fine. We need money. We need people to come up here. So that's kind of the feel I wanted to go for. Getting to use these awesome letters. Oh my god, I love these. These are so good. I don't want to sound ungrateful, what I would have given for a second font just to kind of keep a bit of variation up. Yeah, but they're so good. Using one of these crazy ass clowns. Again, one of the things I notice a lot with these kind of builds here in the UK is again a mix of, even originally a mix of Victorian architecture, very sort of stoic architecture, and crazy signs and silly pictures and things like that. That clown there reminds me of very much of the old sort of postcards you used to get. You know, it's always like a fat couple, and they would be, you know, on the beach, and there would be like a relatively rude for the time quote or something like that, you know. And that's kind of the feel I got with that. The sort of things where you'd there'd be a board with a hole in it that you could stick your head through, you know, that kind of style. So here's the very end of the pier. I wanted a sort of useless backstage almost. So you know, a little bit of a backspace area there of the arcade, but also to show that the entrance to this arcade is right next to that. So it's almost like this building's a bit of an afterthought now. It would probably have quite old machines in it. You know, the newest thing it'd have is something like a Time Crisis. You know, that kind of arcade. I'm sure you all know exactly the sort of thing I mean. These pillars are great. One thing I mentioned this in my overview video. I'm really glad that rather than necessarily giving us another piece of wall, they gave us that tin one that's a bit funky. But the one thing they have done is sort of said, you know what, we have a painted wall piece already, which is the kind of building that pier structures are built out of. So rather than just giving us another painted wall, they've sort of filled this one out a little bit with some extra pillars. Some archways, some other bits of detail, and I think it was a really great way of going about it. I'd be more than happy for them to do that in the future with some of the packs that could probably get filled out a little bit more as well. So finishing off this arcade area then, like I say, this the area here is, you'll see the actual entrance now to the area are these back entrances. And again, it's just a little interesting thing that I thought worked quite well. Here, these are awesome. These large billboards with some sort of nice vintage decals on. I'm going to be using some of those in the second building in a moment when we get to it. A few windows. Not much to say about this really, just sort of filling off the area. I didn't think I'd spent this long on it, to be honest. So here we go, then building the front entrance. So again, I wanted something that would look good, look quite grandiose, but isn't really used anymore. Swords, sort of trying to mess around with a double door there, couldn't really get it how I wanted, and we've got this one that's pretty nice and looks good. So some windows there and a few flower beds. Having a look at the new flower beds, but I decided a big sort of stone flower bed wouldn't really work on a wooden structure, so we've gone instead for some of the older ones. And we finish off with a couple of these. These are probably so far my favourite piece of the vintage pack, the smallest version of this little roof structure. I think it's great. We're using quite a bit here, and I use them on this building and then on the front building to kind of tie them in, but I'm also going to actually go over some of the older buildings in the park, as older as in when we built them older, and add them there as well to kind of have like a running theme throughout the park. You see that I was just turning the A off, so to speak, again, just to make it look like it's a little run down. It's not really cared for as much as it could be. People aren't really coming out, you know, people are going on the roller coasters and stuff now. This area is maybe where Granny comes and has a sit while you go and ride the Thunderer or Arrow or something like that, you know. Talking of roller coasters, I'm definitely going to be putting a bobsleigh coaster in the park based on the new Flying Turns. I'm debating as to whether to build it as a wooden bobsleigh, like the game has given it to us, or trying using the new custom supports and a bit of recolouring, a bit of sort of leeway, trying to make it a steel version like they have at Blackpool with the Avalanche. Whether or not I'm going to be able to do it, I don't know. Whether or not, even if I knew exactly what I was doing regarding supports, I'd be able to do it, I don't know either. So I'm going to have a little play around. May end up just being the wooden one. The wooden one would fit. It's going to go probably behind the Thunderer, a little Thunderer even. So, you know, the wooden one would fit, but I kind of like the idea of having to go a steel one, so I'm not too sure, because that would be 3 wooden coasters all pretty close to each other, so I'm not too sure whether that would be a good thing or not. So the flat ride's in there, and that building's pretty much done. I wanted a very non-permanent looking structure going around this ride. So we start off using these awesome new carnival barriers. They end up being a bit big, they're a bit tall, they cover up too much, so we end up squishing these around a little bit, and I think it looks better in a moment. But for now, I wanted something, like I say, very sort of non-permanent. This is the sort of thing that has been put up around this ride. This ride is, you know, just bolted down. It's not a permanent structure. This can be taken away at any time. So you'll see in a moment. I think here's I'm looking at these thinking, nah, these are just too big. So we end up swishing them around because I love the sort of wooden structure at the bottom. It looks very sort of propped up, and so I'm more than happy to use it. But one thing I wanted to do was just kind of make it look a little bit less permanent, and also make it look a little bit more, looking at it from the top, it doesn't look very good sort of curved around the path like that. It looks better, more of a square shape, I think. A couple of the new trash cans. Love the fact they've got bin bags in. The other ones didn't, I don't think, so a really nice little detail that is. Bringing the thing back up again. So yeah, you know, people's feet are cut off when they walk down here, unfortunately, but I thought it was much better to have this long slab of wood rather than being able to see the paths. If you look at the promo pictures they released of the pack, you can see the path edges, and I don't know why we've never got curbless paths for raised areas. I can only assume it would just be because it would be a very thin path, but yeah, I'd just love to be able to just get rid of those curbs on raised bits, just for things like this. It would be so much better, because here I'm trying to find space to add some of the new vintage machines and claw machines and things like that. Here going in now, this is interesting. So a few people have mentioned using my ones I've done in between the real ones, so that you kind of have like a row of them, because that's the kind of thing you would have. It works quite well with the vending machines because they're pretty much the same size. They just look like a different make of vending machine. But those claw machines I made are huge, and it's not very often that the in-game stuff is better scaled than stuff we try and do ourselves. So gonna have to have a look at those and see if we can either find some on the workshop. I'm sure those people on the workshop has done some good ones. If not, maybe have another look at building some of them again. One thing I did do, I don't think I got the footage on camera, but I have one thing I'm quite happy with is my popcorn trolley that we had already, like a popcorn machine on a set of wheels that people would roll out. The new one is just sort of standard and sat there, but with a bit of work I could take some of the parts off the one I built and put them onto this new one, so it looks like it's a trolley one, even though it's static. So now we've got the best of both worlds. It's my design, one that I'm quite happy with, but guests actually do wander over and use it. And I remember people in the comments when Vintage Pack was announced saying things like, "Oh, but you're dead annoyed that you've got to go back to Pinewood and change a lot." And I'm really not. I've always said the one thing I really want in Planco now is not necessarily more rides, although it turns out the new rides are actually pretty good. But one thing I really want is just more stuff for guests to do that aren't rides. So things like vending machines, things like Zoltars and arcades and Midway, and the little water guns that you have next to log flumes that you can put a pound in and squirt water at people. All those little things that really fill out a park. The sort of stuff that, if you said to somebody what's a theme park made up of, they would say, flat rides and coasters, or they may not use the term flat rides, but they'd say rides and roller coasters. But really, they're actually much fewer of those than there is just other stuff at theme parks. Like in the latest Bro Coaster, the Awesome Mineral Junction has built an upsell trampoline net rig, and it's fantastic. I immediately robbed it. It's going straight into Pinewood because it's the exact sort of thing that will work really well in Pinewood. We've already got our upsell high ropes course and rock climbing and things like that, so it's the exact sort of thing you would find in parks. They're all over the place in the UK. We can actually put it in the park. It's going to be an upsell attraction in the park, but stuff like that, it's so niche. I understand why Frontier don't focus on it and instead just give us more roller coasters and more flat rides and stuff, but it's all those little things that really make a park alive and really make a theme park what it is, in my opinion. Anyway, I haven't spoken at all about what we're building here. This is the entrance to the pier. This is kind of a conglomerate of a few different pier entrances. I had to look at a lot of these. I obviously looked at the Blackpool ones. The Blackpool ones are all huge, and they're all on full-size piers anyway. So I couldn't really work one of those and shrink them down. Especially Central Pier is just like a big old box, big old building that has arcade machines in it. So instead I looked for some smaller ones, and I found two. I can't remember what one of them was called. Hold on, I'm going to click and have a look. Chroma Pier. And then Eastbourne was the other one I found, Eastbourne Pier, and this is kind of a mix of both of them, mostly based on Eastbourne Pier. And it's got these two larger turrets on the left and right, and then this sort of domed, curved, sort of pointed roof in the middle. It actually turns out really well. I'm quite happy with this. The only thing I might do is I've just noticed on the Eastbourne one, it doesn't really have a roof here. It has a clock actually. I think that'd be quite a nice touch to go back and add a clock there. So I may well do that. But yeah, again, it's loosely themed on this one. I really wanted to use a lot of the vintage pieces, and especially those new vintage roofs, because I really quite like those. So this is loosely based on the Eastbourne Pier entrance, or at least one of them. It might have multiple piers, Eastbourne, I'm not sure. I know Brighton has a couple, and obviously Blackpool has 3. On the other side, I wanted a couple of stores, again, mostly as a way of getting people up here, but also these are the kind of things you find selling things like fish and chips and hot dogs and things like that. This, again, the theming behind this is based on Blackpool Pleasure Beach itself. Actually, there's a run of shops in Blackpool Pleasure Beach that kind of work like the ones in Planco do. I mean, normally you go to a shop, you order fish and chips and somebody else has a cake or somebody else has a hot dog. It's all the one building, but there is this row of little quick service restaurants in Blackpool that they literally, one of them does fish and chips, one of them does hot dogs, one of them does donuts, and you go to the one you want to go to, and I quite like that, so I thought I'd try and do the replica of that here, and I've gone for typical British donuts and coffee. And I know it doesn't sound that British. Normally you would think of fish and chips or things like that, but actually donuts and coffee is quite a popular seaside combo now, because apart from this ridiculous summer we've had, normally the weather's relatively miserable at seasides. So you go and it's dark and dingy, and a cup of coffee gets you warmed up. So here we go, hot chocolate, fresh donuts this side, and I've gone for the British spelling as well. You do find the American spelling quite a lot over here, to be honest, but I wanted to really sort of hammer home this is a British park, so we've gone for the British spelling of donuts. That fantastic GH sound that doesn't exist. Donuts. And then I had a few different options about capping this off. I looking at all different things and thinking about using those shapes again, but I thought, you know what, no, another thing I noticed a lot with these kind of buildings as I've looked at them is that they kind of don't really care what they look like from the back. And technically this is the back. You have this nice grandiose area coming onto the pier, but then the other way it's coffee and donuts and spend your money and go away. So that's kind of one of the feel I wanted to go for here. Few little bits of signage. I thought that I could have this coffee as a Street Fox coffee, so they've come in and spent a bit of money and added a few signage. Again, that sort of juxtaposition of nice Victorian architecture and corporate greed. I thought it was quite a good combo there. Now there's a little cut there. Unfortunately, I had a crash. It wasn't the advanced move crash, though. That genuinely, touch wood, seems to have not been an issue for me lately. But I have been getting a GPU crash occasionally. It's nothing to do with Planet Coaster. I genuinely think my graphics card is starting to get a little old. It's a GTX 780, so it's got a few years on it now. And also, it's getting a bit warm in these ridiculous temperatures, especially when I'm recording audio, because I have to have my fan off. I think it's just getting a little bit hot. Please just rain. Oh my god, I know it sounds like I'm moaning, but we're just not built for it here in the UK. We don't have these five week stretches of no rain. It's crazy. Anyway, we get to use these awesome letters. I'm going to use these so much. I already know exactly where I'm going to use them next. You're going to be fed up of seeing them. I just love them. I think they're so nice. They're maybe a little bit, they're maybe like 20% bigger than they should be, but considering this is Planet Coaster, they're a great size. So yeah, I just really like them. I was considering calling this something, Pinewood Pier. I might do a smaller Pinewood to go above the pier using some art shapes, but we'll see how small we can get with them. I'm not too sure. Last thing I wanted to do then was a little bit of detailing here. I start with these ones. These are a bit too big, actually. We end up just taking it down to these pieces there instead. These iron girder stuff I love. Again, it's something you're going to get fed up seeing them soon because they're just really nice touches. So still needs a little bit of work from the back there, and on the interior as well. You can see there where the staff members are walking down. I want some of those old vintage signs there and stuff. So and also, the back towers there need a little bit of detailing, some windows and stuff. Literally just ran out of time, unfortunately, today, but I've had lots of fun building this. Real big fan of the vintage pack. Like I say, I think Studio still nips it for me. But yeah, this is a really good fun pack, and nice to just build something so different as well to what we've done before. The vintage pack, it's not a safe bet for Planco. They could have quite easily come out with like a Japanese pack or like a world pack or some more animals or something like that. And this is a bit of a dark horse. I think it's not something anyone's asked for. But it seems to be going down pretty well. Everyone seems really positive about it. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan for Pinewood Hills. Not too sure how much of this stuff's going to be workable in Geekism Studios, as vintage at least. Obviously, you can use the parts for all sorts of things, so there's probably going to be finding uses for them there. But yeah, overall, I think it's another home run from Planet Coaster. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, you can give us a like. It really does help out the channel. And if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe. Any thoughts, queries, or suggestions, you can pop those down in the comments. And if you fancy a chat, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at JonTSparrow. If you'd like to join in with the Geekism community, you can do so over on our Geekism Discord server. You'll find the link for that in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.